Dear students, welcome to the virtual class of Indian Constitution. So we are talking about the first unit. In first unit, uh, which consists of the introduction and other details. So today let us discuss about the salient features of the Constitution. The salient features of the Constitution of India listed like this: a comprehensive document or a detailed document, number one. Number two, a sovereign democratic republic. Number three, a secular state. Number four, the rigidity and flexibility. Number five, parliamentary democracy. Number six, federal character. Number seven, fundamental rights. Number eight, directive principles of state policy. Number 9, fundamental duties. Number 10, independent judiciary. Number 11, protection of minorities. Number 12, official language. Number 13, autonomous organizations. Number 14, National Human Rights Commission and Protection of Human Rights. And 15th, universal adult suffrage. So these are some of the important salient features which helps us to know about the nature and structure of the Constitution of India. So let us discuss one by one the features of the Constitution of India. First one, a comprehensive or a detailed document. The Constitution of India is sufficiently a comprehensive document. At its commencement, it had 395 articles in 22 parts and 8 schedules. It is made up of almost 80,000 words. In its current form, so as on March 14th, 2019, it has a preamble, 25 parts with 448 articles, 12 schedules, 5 appendices, and 103 amendments, the latest of which came into force on 12th January 2019. Total 124 constitutional amendment bills are presented in the Parliament till 1st June 2019. The latest amendment, 103rd Amendment, has done on 12th January 2019. This amendment is related to reservation of jobs in government offices as well as government educational institutions. It also applicable on admissions to private higher educational institutions. It applicable to the citizens belonging to economically weaker sections from the upper castes. Constituent Assembly of India took 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to write the Constitution. Every aspect of the Constitution is fairly discussed and elaborately explained. It is a bulky one and probably the lengthiest constitution in the world. There are separate chapters on citizenship, fundamental rights, and directive principles of state policy. The problems of public service, Anglo-Indians, scheduled castes, official language, minorities are discussed at length. Emergency provisions, matters relating to judiciary and relations between the states and the union occupy much space in the constitution. The conditions which prevailed at the time of the partition of the country have compelled the authors of the constitution to be cautious about the future. They wanted to avoid any conflict in future between the union and states. Therefore, it is not surprising to note that the Constitution of India is a detailed document. Second feature of our Constitution is a sovereign democratic republic. The preamble of the Constitution declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. In the first place, India is a sovereign state subject to no control, either external or internal. It is an independent state. In the second place, India has a system of democratic government. In India, every citizen has direct access to the avenues of authority. The Constitution confers the right to vote on all adult persons above 18. The legislature of the states and Parliament of India are both elected. The people are given an opportunity to choose their masters after regular intervals. By parliamentary government and universal adult franchise, the government becomes accountable to the people and to their representatives. In the third place, India is a republic. The head of the state is an elected president. It does not provide place to a king or a monarch to rule India. Number three, a secular state. By secular state, we mean that the system of government which is conducted not on the basis of any religious faith. Indian Republic is a secular democratic state. It means that the government of India is neutral in matters of religion and faith. The Constitution of India is opposed to communal policy. It allows freedom of religion. It provides the guarantee of freedom of faith, worship, and conscience. No discrimination is made on religious grounds in matters of public employment. Religious instructions in educational institutions only maintained out of state funds are prohibited. The state itself has no official religion and it is far from propagating any particular faith or religion. Number four, the rigidity and flexibility. The Constitution of India is a unique combination of rigidity and flexibility. There are some provisions in our Constitution which can be amended by a joint action of the Union Parliament and the state legislatures. Examples are the election of the President, Union and State Judiciary, constitutional relationship between the Union and states. So, to this extent, the Constitution of India is rigid. Rigid means the amendment procedure to make corrections or any changes to these above provisions is very difficult. So, which constitution is difficult to amend is called as the rigid constitution. So, in these above matters, our constitution is a rigid one. And next, there are some parts in our constitution which can be amended by the parliament by ordinary lawmaking process. Examples are citizenship provisions, reorganization of states, creation and abolition of the upper chambers in the states. So, in these matters, the amendment of the Constitution of India is so easy. So, whenever the circumstances are changed, or whenever there is a necessity to amend these provisions in our Constitution, so they can be amended by the Parliament itself. In times of emergency, the federal character of the Constitution can be abolished. So, to this extent, the Constitution is flexible. Till now, the Constitution of India has been amended for 103 times. So, this clearly shows that how flexible the amendment procedure of the Constitution. So, because of the flexibility only, 103 times our Constitution has been amended. A fifth feature, parliamentary democracy. The Constitution of India provides for a parliamentary form of government both at the center and in the states. A parliamentary democracy is characterized by two factors. First, nominal and real executive. The President of India is constitutional head of the state, acting on the advice of the ministry. The ministers belong to the majority party in the legislature and are collectively responsible to it. Secondly, the ultimate legislative and financial control is vested in the popular house called Lok Sabha. So, in these two aspects, India is a parliamentary democracy. In India, the real executive is the Union Council of Ministers chosen from the Parliament. The ministers are collectively responsible to the Parliament. The President of India performs no official function except on the advice of his ministers. So, also, the governors of states are required to exercise their functions on the advice of the Council of Ministers. Sixth feature, federal character. The Indian Constitution is federal in form with a basis towards unitary. It includes all the normal features of a federal government. It has a dual government, that is, the union government and the state governments. So, dual government is the important feature of the federal system, so that we have in our country. So, two sets of governments are working in our country. There is a distribution of powers between the center and the states. So, this is another important factor uh, for the federal system of government. So in our country also, the powers of the state are divided between the center and the states. So according to the constitutional provision, there are three lists of subjects: union list, state list, and concurrent list. So accordingly, the powers are distributed between center and the states. Whatever powers are given, the subjects listed in the union list, the central government can make laws, and the subjects given in the state list, so on these subjects only the states are empowered to make law, and on the subjects which are mentioned in the concurrent list, both the center and the state governments can make laws. So in this way the powers are distributed between two governments. The constitution is written, rigid, and supreme. So this is another essential of the federal system. So we have uh, these features also in our constitution. Our constitution is a written one. Why? Because it is available in the form of a book or in a printed form. The constitution is rigid, so sometimes the amendment of the Indian constitution is very difficult. And our constitution is the supreme law of the nation. So, on this basis, we can say that India is having a federal system of government. There is an independent Supreme Court with the powers to interpret the Constitution and decide disputes between the Union and the states or between the states themselves. So this is another important factor of for the federal system. So in our country also we have independent Supreme Court, which is created independent and autonomous. There is no any interference of any government in the functions of the Supreme Court. So on these grounds we can say that India has a federal system of government. The distinctive feature of the federalism is that the central government can issue administrative directions to the states in a relation to certain matters. But in our country, uh, the system of government in India is not a federal one. Sometimes the government may become unitary. So during the national emergency, the central government can issue administrative directions to the state governments, and the central government can also make laws on the subjects of the state list. So in this way there is a domination of the central government. The residuary powers are vested in the union. So there is a distribution of powers according to the three lists of subjects, but the remaining powers subjects are vested in the union. So this also shows that the union government has more powers. In times of emergency, the union parliament can make laws in relation to the matters of the state list. There is a provision for single citizenship for the whole country, but literally speaking, the federal system requires the dual citizenship. Why? Because if there are two governments working, then there must be dual citizenship. But in our country, there is a provision for single citizenship for the entire country. So, whatever may be the speaking language or territory or state, the people of India enjoy only single citizenship. So there is no provision to enjoy double citizenship in India. But in pure federal states like United States of America, people enjoy dual citizenship. First, they are the citizens of their provinces, then they are the citizens of United States of America. So that system you don't have. Hence, some call India's system of government, which is at most quasi-federal, almost devolutionary in character, a unitary state with subsidiary federal features, rather than federal state with unitary features. Seventh one, fundamental rights, which is another very important feature of the Constitution of India. Part 3 of the Constitution of India includes an impressive list of fundamental rights and thus offers to all the citizens individually and collectively those basic freedoms and conditions of life which alone can make life significant and democracy fruitful. Such rights are considered to be essential for the proper moral and material upliftment of the people. These rights are an integral part of the Constitution and hence cannot be altered or taken away by ordinary legislation. These rights are fundamental in the sense that any law passed by any legislature in the country would be declared as null and void. So it means unconstitutional if it is derogatory to the rights guaranteed by the Constitution. If any of these rights is violated, the individual affected is entitled to move to the Supreme Court or High Court for the protection and enforcement of his rights. However, during the operation of emergency, the President may suspend all fundamental rights and may also suspend the rights of the people to move to the High Court and Supreme Court for the enforcement of these rights. So, any such order may extend to the whole or any part of India. The fundamental rights in our constitution are categorized into different groups. Right to equality. So, Article 14 to 18 deals with right to equality and its other provisions. Right to freedom. Article 19 to 22 deals with the provisions of right to freedom. Right against exploitation. Article 23 and 24. Right to freedom of religion. Article 25 to 28. Cultural and educational rights. Article 29 to 30. Right to constitutional remedies. Article 32. So these are the main fundamental rights. But recently, one more right is included in our constitution under a new article 21A, so which is related to the right to compulsory education and the right to property. So this right to property was one of the fundamental rights in the beginning, but now it is remained only as a legal right in the constitution. So article 31, 31A and 31B. So these articles deals with right to property. The Janata Party government on 20th June 1978 omitted the right to property from the constitution by 44th Amendment Act of 1978. However, under Article 300A, right to property is a constitutional right. It has, therefore, renamed now as an ordinary legal right in the Constitution. Eighth feature of the Constitution is the directive principles of state policy. So there is a separate topic on this. So where you study in detail the directive principles of state policy. So just I will highlight on the directive principles. Part 4 of the Constitution deals with the directive principles of state policy. These principles command the state and every one of its agencies to follow certain fundamental principles while they frame their policies. These principles are assurances to the people on the one hand as to what they can expect from the state, and on the other, they are directives to the center and the state governments to establish and maintain a social order. Originally, unlike the fundamental rights, these were only directive principles which could be enforced by the judiciary. So, these principles are now enforceable through law courts by the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. Fundamental duties.